Saints at Cowboys, Thanksgiving Day. Marco, who do you like and why?
Like the Dallas Cowboys. New coach, new attitude, and there's still value, I think, with the Cowboys based on their bad start at the beginning of the season.
Is it all right? So really, the question for a handicapper is, which of these Cowboy teams are genuinely the team? Is it the team that's played quite well the last 2 weeks, or is it the team that was one of the worst teams the first chunk of the season? Now, clearly, it's the same players, so this can only be mindset, motivation. So when you look at this Cowboy team, what are you seeing that makes you think it is the last 2 weeks is more genuine?
Well, first of all, RJ, one of the, we talk about different theories of handicapping, and one of the things that you do look at is when there is a coaching change, there is generally that little upbeat, that spark of life into the team. And when it does work, and they won the first week, they come back and won the second week, it becomes the old theory that you don't get in front of a streak. You stay with it until it changes. And I think playing on...
But hold on. I'm agreeing with everything you're saying, but then you just said something that feels a little too simple. Is if you don't, as you say, get in front of a streak, if you don't buck a streak, let's say, then that seems to contradict a lot of what we talk about, which is when you see a great performance on TV or a team has rolled off a couple of games, we look to fade them oftentimes, saying they're overvalued, this all happened on TV, and I guess my question is, what's the distinction?
Well, I think what you just brought up about being on TV and people seeing, that would be a discussion for next week after this game, because how many people saw Detroit play Dallas last week? That was not a marquee game. If you weren't in Detroit or Dallas, you didn't see the performance. So this is a situation, national spotlight. It's a Thursday game. It's the only game going to be played at that time. The whole world will be watching.
Okay, so what you're saying is that the whole don't buck a streak isn't what we're trying to say here. We're trying to say that you've seen a fundamental change in the way the Cowboys are playing, and the public has yet to catch up to the fact that this coaching change has led to a fundamental change.
Exactly, but I still talk about momentum. When you have a team that has the momentum,
Then that goes back. If you have it, let's say the Cowboys win by 21 points. Now, are you going to look to play them next week?
If the value, when I see the line come out, if they adjust it.
Yeah, but they're going to. That's the whole point. If the Cowboys make a statement on national TV this week, next week, there's going to be a premium back on them, you would think, because in general, Dallas has a premium on them in general.
Absolutely.
So you would buck a streak in that case.
It's too easy to say that just in one, because let's put it this way. If they win this week, I probably would not want to buck them because they have momentum. But if they didn't have the new coach and all of this, it would be a perfect letdown spot, I will say, because this is kind of like their Super Bowl, playing the Thanksgiving Day feature game, playing a team that is going to be in the playoffs, the Saints. It is a natural letdown. But because of the coach, I just have a rule. If a team's playing well like that because of something out of the ordinary, and go back to baseball season, I talked about this with Gil on his podcast. The Baltimore Orioles this year, when they fired their manager in mid-season and hired Buck Showalter, they went on a run. And they went on a run that lasted basically the rest of the season. And there was a lot of value on that team because baseball is such a long sport, and they were an underdog. People that kept taking Baltimore in that underdog role made money. So that's a question for next week. But for this week,
all right, but what we try to do here is break down the games, but also try to teach how to handicap. So what I'm hearing you say is this: is oftentimes what appears to be a fundamental difference in a team is just a random good performance, and oftentimes we want to buck that the next week because there's an overreaction. We keep talking about that. People overreact to things that happened recently. They overreact to things they see. You're saying that sometimes things that you see are genuine. There's a reason you're seeing it, and thus, though you might be paying a premium, you don't necessarily want to fade it. Maybe it's even a pass, and that's something we talked about with Boise State. Again, we know there's a premium on them, but we think it's justified. What you're saying is if the Cowboys would win here, you wouldn't look to bucket, but you would think that the premium that you would expect next week would maybe be justified.
It would balance the playing field with it. But for this week, what I've seen from the Cowboys in 2 weeks, and again, you're looking at they played the Giants where they ambushed them 2 weeks ago. The Giants, probably didn't take them serious enough. And then last week, let's not get too carried away. It was the Detroit Lions. But this week they're playing a Saints team, and the one thing that does cause me a little bit of pause with the Saints, it's a kind of a revenge thing, but it's not a big revenge one. If you remember last year, the Dallas Cowboys are the team that ended the Saints' perfect season last year. They went very deep. They were into December, before they lost their first game last year, and it was.
So you're looking at that as potential motivation for New Orleans?
That would be the one factor that gives me pause with taking Dallas. Yeah, if this would be a great spot for revenge for that on a national audience.
Here's my takeaways. One is this matchup proves beyond a shadow of a doubt, and actually there's another matchup that this week that fits into this category, that if you strictly use statistical handicapping, you're not getting the whole picture. I mean, this literally is the same Dallas team player-wise than, that they got killed a couple of weeks ago. Psychology, motivation, mindset matters. So the stats can tell you things you can't see with your eyes, but you better be thinking about how hard are these players playing. And if there's ever been an example, it's the Cowboys here. I also think, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about this in a webcam video, so it'll probably be instructive for you too. So go to pregame.tv, and in the next day or so, we'll tape it on Tuesday. I'm going to have a webcam video. It talks about the following concept. This is a game not to tease. No matter what, it's likely going to have polarized results, which means extreme or extreme. The Cowboys either it's been fluky and they're not really playing better and they're going to, probably get beat pretty bad here, or they are a very different team and they have a good chance to win the game. The lines maker doesn't know what the answer is, so what he kind of does is go in the middle, right? You're thinking it is a different team, thus there's value. Your play is all about the Cowboys the last 2 weeks are who the Cowboys are. The lines maker's not sure of that because some people think otherwise. But the key is there's probably going to be an extreme result, and thus the 7 points or the 6 points of the tease isn't worth a lot. But I'll go a little deeper into that on my webcam. So I think that's an interesting point. I had one more, but you want to jump in?
One of the other stats that I have here, and again, this is a Dallas-based stat, and we're doing it with the old players, but Dallas, the last 3 years against the NFC South, they're a perfect 6-0 against the spread when they face teams.
All right, so when I hear that, my first thought is that's meaningless. Now, where do you divine the meaning in that?
Well, it's playing that division, and this is New Orleans that is a team out of that division, and they did play them last year, and they did beat them in their only loss of the season.
And that's the
or
part,
not their only loss, but their first loss.
That's the part of this where with trends where it's not all science. You've got the trend. The question is there logic behind it? On that one, the logic doesn't jump out at me, but it's an interesting conversation as we look at these trends, is what's it really saying? Now, here's one I actually think, and again, that's my opinion, that I think there's some logic to. Saints are 10 of 12 ATS, so 10-2, against losing home teams. So you keep hearing about the Saints being, a really good home team, not as good on the road, but 10-2 when they play a home team that isn't very good, defined as a losing team record-wise. Now that though goes back to
which Dallas
team is it? My last point, and then I'll let you do your official projection here. The Cowboys are used to these Thursday games. They play Thanksgiving every year,
right.
And though there's been some change in the coaching staff, Garrett's been there for years, I think that's an advantage. Let's be honest, how many times a year does an NFL team play on Sunday then play on Thursday?
And they were home last Sunday. to boot.
The Cowboys
The
were.
Cowboys. So even, better for them where the Saints have to do the travel. One thing that I'll add to the Saints have won 5 of their last 7 games, and now everybody's, kind of giving them the big group hug again that they're back. Because remember, the Saints struggled at the beginning of the season. But if you look deeper into those 5 wins, 3 of those wins, 2 of them were Carolina, and 1 of them was Seattle. Really not the upper echelon of the NFL, to say the least. So I still think that there's a little bit of a mirage here with the Saints, that people think that they're officially back. They've just been playing some bad teams and pounding them offensively. Their defense is still suspect, and they've played teams that really can't score.
Yeah, I disagree. I looked at the ESPN rankings and I looked at the top 8 that just came out today on Tuesday, and the Saints were 8th. And I looked at it. I think the case could be made that any of the top 8 teams are the best team in the NFL. The Saints team I saw against the Steelers, and what really made me perk my ears up is when you said their defense is suspect. From what I'm seeing, that defense has turned around. And the way they played against Pittsburgh, to me, was very impressive defensively.
There's no question the Pittsburgh win is their signature win on the season. But let's not forget, too, that Pittsburgh was in the middle of, that was the second of a 3-game road trip, and it was a Halloween night atmosphere.
It's a pick 'em game. They won by 10. They overperformed. Give us your projection.
And Heath Miller fumbled late in the fourth quarter.
There's always
going in at 3. But I like Dallas here.
See that bell, the phone ring is saying you've been talking too long. Give us your projection, baby.
I thought I was being saved by the bell from you. But anyways, Dallas, 27-24, they get it on Thanksgiving Day.
Okay, now it's your turn to continue the conversation with Marco and me. And next up, we're going to be talking about the other Thursday game on ESPN, Texas A&M at Texas.